I will take a little executive privilege here and tell you that this Dublin Touchdown Club Football Hall of Fame is long overdue. Thank you, Coach Roger Holmes, for being the driving force behind something that we should have done 25 years ago, maybe. I just think it's wonderful. He didn't do everything by himself, of course, but almost by himself, folks, so I'll just tell you. I also want to remind everyone that last year we had our first induction ceremony. A great group of folks came in. One of those folks who was not able to be here was Mr. Bill Sims. Would you please stand up and let everybody see Bill Sims? If you were here last year, then you know that Wash Larson did a great job telling us about Bill Sims and what he meant to Dublin High School football. I really am going to be brief, but I got to tell you this one story about my son Sam. My son Sam was a pitcher and pitched in college and so forth. And I told him one time, I said, I'd like to get up and bat against you. And he laughed. He laughed. My son at the time was coaching alongside Ben Snipes. And I said, what are you laughing at? And I said, I batted against Ben Snipes. And my son said, good grief, that was 1960, something, you know. Pitching today is a lot. I mean, nothing like. I said, wait a minute. I said, you coach with Ben Snipes right now? He said, oh, yes. And you were 62 at the time. And I said, now, you know he's 62 years old. He said, yeah, my son's in the prime of his life. And I said, now, this would never happen. I know. But what if Coach Snipes got extremely angry at you? He said, oh, my gosh, he'd kill me. That's just what he said. And I said, the man is 62 years old. You're in the prime of your life, but you're telling me when he was 18, he couldn't throw a baseball as hard as you do? And so, Ben, we're glad that you're here. Ben will also be presenting with us.
Good evening. I have the honor of presenting a candidate for the Dublin Football High School Hall of Fame. He never played as a Dublin Irish. He was a member of the Dublin Green Hurricanes way back in the mid-1920s. His real name was Herman Dumas Wynn. But Mr. Wynn was so fast they called him Breezy. So from now on, I'm just going to call him Breezy. He was a three-sport star in track, basketball, and football, highly sought after by college coaches. In 1926, the Dublin Green Hurricanes won the 12th Congressional District Championship. There were no state championships in those days. After a 5-2-1 regular season, Dublin played Eastman for the district title. Breezy stepped in right near the end of the game with the score tied at 0-0, intercepted a pass on the Dublin 3-yard line, and ran it back for 97 yards to win the game. He was also a very gifted offensive running back. He, along with three others, were named the Four Horsemen, kind of copying the backfield of University of Notre Dame. But then something happened in 1927, and Breezy's career ended after the 1927 season. His own family thought, well, yeah, he played here all of his whole high school career, but something beyond Breezy's control happened in the late part of the 1927 season. Remember, Dublin had beaten Eastman the year before to win the title. And this year, down in Eastman won the game by a very close score. One of our boys got a little bit frustrated and started a fight. And then this is when things go from bad to worse. Dr. Parkinson from Eastman pulled out his knife and stabbed one of the Dublin football players. See, I told you, Coach. You can guess what's coming. The superintendent at that time banned athletic teams for 3 years, so Breezy had no choice. He went on to Georgia Military College in 1928 and was a star running back at Richmond Academy in Augusta in 1929. He enrolled at the University of Tennessee in 1930 and played there until the 1934 season. During the first game of the 1933 season, he broke his leg. Coach Nayland, the legendary Tennessee coach, said it cost the Volunteers 3 games that season without having Breezy in the backfield. Because of that, to that time, they had never lost a game when Breezy Wynn started. When he got to Tennessee, he was driving an Essex automobile without a top and had $10 in his pocket. By the end of his business career, he was one of the richest men in the state of Tennessee. Was considered one of the best fullbacks in the Southeastern Conference in his day. Also was a place kicker. He played with all the greats of Tennessee in the 1930s, Beatty Feathers, Herman Hickman, and Bobby Dodd, and was a recipient of the Amateur Football Award from the National Football Hall of Fame. In 1958, he was nominated to Sports Illustrated's Silver Anniversary Collegiate Football All-Star Team, and these were for players who had gone after their careers and made a mark on our society. He became a rather famous industrialist. When he got to college, he figured he might as well make a little money while he was there, so he opened up a dry cleaners, a pool room, a barber shop, a meat market, and a collection agency. And after graduation, he opened up an athletic equipment company. When World War II started, he figured, well, maybe I can also make uniforms for the military. He became, in the 1940s, known as the king of the duffel bags. More than 9 million duffel bags were turned out in his factories in the Southeast. And by 1945, he had 10 factories all across the eastern United States. Shipped millions of garments across the country and across the world. He continued in that business. He retired for a short period of time in the 1960s and then got into Apparel Corporation of America, which again brought him millions of dollars. He was a very prominent member of the Republican Party and a close friend of President Richard Nixon. And Janet Smith, his cousin, was telling me that he possibly was the United States ambassador to Ireland. In 1977, his office building burned, destroying all of his mementos, everything, all the trophies, all the photographs, all was gone. But Breezy took it all in stride. And as a historian, I can appreciate this comment. He said, look ahead. Yesterday is history, but tomorrow will always bring and offer new challenges to be conquered. I can't wait until tomorrow. The legend of Breezy Wynn, also known as the Duke of Dublin, still lives on in this community, and no fire, no damage to his mementos could ever take that away. So it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce to you Herman Dumas Breezy Wynn to the Dublin Football Hall of Fame. Looking out for his niece, Janet. Oh, okay, right in front of her. And she's going to say a few words.
Right. It's kind of hard to be first on something, isn't it? But this is quite an honor for the Breezy Wynn family, and I'm delighted to accept this honor. There are many stories that my mother, Marilyn Rawls, who's with us tonight, could tell us, but we won't let her tell them because I think there are things that we probably couldn't repeat. But there's one thing that you probably would all be interested in. He was the first person to receive a patent for the, let me get this straight, your football pants, the slit that's in them that you put the knee pad in, that was his invention. He was the producer of lightweight football equipment, and so this was just something that he invented as well because he knew that it would help since he was a football player and knew how difficult it was with all these heavy clothing on that you have. But thank you again. It's an honor.
Good evening. First of all, excited to be a part of the Trojan family, the Irish family, one big family. Go Irish. What I like to say. I've been fortunate to be around and see a lot of Dublin football and just a lot about Dublin. And my daddy came through with some of you, so we go back a ways as well. But Charles Bradshaw, one of the great things about Charles is he comes through, and I was reading up on it, trying to do a little bit of research on him, and I know how I helped him. Because he's tied to that Hardee's that used to be across the street from Dublin High School that I went to every morning while I was in high school. And so, but tell you a little bit about him. He had 13 varsity letters during his years at Dublin High, lettering in 5 varsity sports each of his juniors and senior years. And he came from Lake City, Florida to get to Dublin that year. He was a Associated Press little All-American, NAIA All-American. He wound up going to the University of Georgia and getting hurt, and he wound up going to Wofford and did some great things at Wofford. And so, like I said, he was Together Magazine, All-American, Methodist University, and Wofford College Athletic Hall of Fame, State of South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame, State of South Carolina Business Hall of Fame. So the great thing is we're now excited to see him in the Dublin Touchdown Hall of Fame. So he was not going to be able to be here tonight, but he was going to try to do his best to be here next year and to kind of sit in and come in and meet and greet everybody to see him. But we're excited to once again put in Charles Bradshaw to the Dublin Football Hall of Fame.
He called me several times. He made me promise to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And he is going to do everything he can. Well, he promises to be here next year to be with us. So there we go.
I guess everybody here probably know me. I've been around here since 1961. So, good afternoon. Tonight I want to introduce Ulysses Ryan, who was an end, played the end position, and he had 4 of the highest honors that we could bestow upon him during those 4 years. He was a very good football player, and I know that some of you probably will remember him. This season, I think, is one of the most memorable things that I remember about him. And I'm sorry about the records. The records somewhere got lost during the integration of 1971. But anyway, Ulysses played a wonderful football game in Anderson, South Carolina. That's one of the football games that he really was outstanding in. We lost that game 7-6, but he did a wonderful job in his position, and I'll never forget it. He came to the bus after the game, so I'm sorry, Coach. We had 3 coaches, and I'm going to know that Richard Johnson and Jones, that is. Mr. Jones was the head coach, and I was a third coach, which is backfield and coach at that time. And I think that those guys did a wonderful job. We went to Cedartown that day, and Cedartown beat us 6. We had not lost the game in our conference, but they beat us 6-7. 7-6. But anyway, it was a wonderful experience just being with those guys throughout these years. Where's Ulysses? Will you stand up, Ulysses? Bring him up.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. got a few words here that I'd like to say concerning Oconee High School and the coaching staff and all the teachers there at that time. And they were more like our family, mother and father, away from home. I'm so glad to be here. I'm very thankful. First, I'd like to give honor to Jesus Christ, who is the head of my life. Next, I would like to wish and to thank Mr. Brown, Roscoe Brown, for a very kind introduction. I thank him for that. I further thank the Dublin Touchdown Club Football Hall of Fame Committee and all others who played a part in making it possible for me to receive this honor, and for all your consideration which made it possible for me to be formally introduced into the Dublin Touchdown Club Hall of Fame. I give recognition to Mr. H.T. Jones, Mr. Richard Johnson, and Mr. Roscoe Barr, who were the three of my coaches, football coaches, at Oconee High School. Never in my wildest dream I would have believed to that the skill and the guidance they taught and provided for me would help to lead me in this forgettable moment. I am humble and having been nominated and selected to receive this award this evening. I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart, and pray that God will continue to richly bless you. I thank each and every one of you. I am honored.
Let me start off by just saying a couple of things. And, you know, Henry almost didn't make it. He had to be resurrected from the dead and everything. We found out that word was out, Henry, that you had passed away and everything. So finally they got a hold of you, and I'm glad that you were here. And there's a connection between a lot of the guys that played in many ways. Mr. Stewart was Henry's high school coach up till his senior year. And as I talked to Henry, he sent Bill a scrapbook. I had a chance to go back and read some things that his mother had, and then I called Henry and asked him something. He told me one little story. Somewhere along the way, Henry was a big, big back in those days. 185 pounds was a pretty good size. And again, this is a ninth grader. Henry had been moved to center, I think, or the line of scrimmage, and we had a B team coach that came through here, Bobby Rich. That they were running sprints the first day of practice, and Henry was one of the fastest guys on running sprints, so he promoted Henry back from the line of scrimmage to the backfield. So that's the reason probably that Henry said he was able to get there, because they made him back into a back rather than a lineman and everything. But another thing is, I was reading the scrapbook that Henry's mother had, that Henry's senior year, and some of you guys that were there at the football banquet that year, Charlie Bradshaw, and let me get the name here right, because I don't know all these people. Jerry Richardson attended the banquet in honoring, the 58 football team. And Charlie Bradshaw, y'all heard about him, but I think Jerry Richardson, if this is according to Marvin Tarpley now, he's the owner of the Carolina Panthers. Is that correct, or anybody? I don't know that, but those two guys came as support Henry's senior year to the banquet at the end of football season and everything. Talking to Bill, the criteria that they used to start considering somebody for the Hall of Fame. I think one of the first things you said, Bill, was if you was an all-state football player. Right. Henry Sheffield was an all-state football player his junior year and his senior year, so he met that criteria very well. He also received a college scholarship to Furman University and played football at Furman University, and he was also an outstanding football player. Now, I've got some stats, and they're not the best in the world. I'm going to start off with his junior year. Junior year, he had he ran the ball 142 times, gained 844 yards. He threw 24 passes, completed 10 for 224 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had 6 catches for 84 yards, which gave him a total of 152 total yards, and he scored 81 points. He was Player of the Week for the Macon Telegraph twice. In the Swainsboro game, he rushed for 136 yards and 17 carries, scored 3 touchdowns. In the Dodge County game, I think, which was the last game of the season, he I don't know the yardage, but he scored 4 touchdowns in that ball game. So, and this is what was, after looking and reading this stuff, was that he had several ball games where he scored multiple, when I say multiple, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns, which is pretty good. He was voted the outstanding back his junior year by the Touchdown Club, and he was and that pretty much covers his junior year. I don't have as good a stats on his senior year, but his senior year, his rushing yardage went up to 978 yards, and his scoring, he went up to scored 108 points during that season. He was selected Player of the Week against Swainsboro by the Macon Telegraph, had 134 yards and 20 carries, scored 4 touchdowns in that ball game. And I think Henry said that probably the one that was the biggest honor was at his last football game against Baldwin County. He was selected Player of the Week or Back of the Week by the Atlanta Journal and Constitution against Baldwin County. He gained 107 yards and 14 carries, passed for 178 yards on 6 completions, a total of 285 yards, scored 5 touchdowns in his last football game. So that speaks very well there. He was voted most valuable player his senior year, and he was also, I think they picked back of the year, lineman of the year. He was one of the top 2 or 3 choices as back of the year in the Middle Georgia area at that time. So I'd like to congratulate Henry Sheffield and invite him up as to be inducted into the Hall of Fame here for the Touchdown Club and all.
Yes, I almost was a lineman. I don't guess there's anything wrong with that, but Coach Rich asked me, he said, you've been running your sprints about as quick as anybody else. Why don't you try fullback and see how that'll work out? I can only tell you that I want to tell you about the first touchdown I scored against Johnson County in Wrightsville. Probably about a 10-yard run, but it's the first time I'd ever scored a touchdown. When I hit the goal line, I felt like I was not in control anymore. My feet were running. I felt no pressure, no energy going out of my body. I was wide open. I went through the goal. I went through the goal line, through the goal post, out the back of the end zone. There was an embankment. I went up the embankment, and the only thing that stopped me was the fence. I went back to Coach Rich, and I said, I think I like this position. And that's the way it was, and we had a good time. I wish that in my class there was only a few that were on the football team. Royce Cullens, Billy Eberhart, and I think both of those have passed away now, and myself. Now, there may have been some more that I'm not thinking of, but everybody that I knew and I grew up with, like I was running a little Stanley Johnson, that's who I grew up with. All the guys around my neighborhood were a little bit younger than me. If I had to do it all over again, I'd like to go back. Wouldn't you? All you players, wouldn't you like to go back and do it one more time? But, I think that what I would do, I would try to flunk the 8th grade where I'd get in line for that championship team. Of course, my sister would probably tell you I wouldn't have to try too hard. But that was the most fun in my whole life. And I'm from Dublin. I was born at Claxton Hospital by Dr. Bell. There may be some more people in the room who can say the same thing. But I've been from Dublin. I've traveled all over the United States. And the further I got from home, the guys on the other side of the desk would say, "Where are you from?" Because they could tell I had a little bit of accent. And I always tell them, "I'm from Dublin, Georgia. I was born there." So I got a plant in Fitzgerald now, but I was born in Dublin, Georgia. I'll be from Dublin even to the end. And my wife, she's from Forsyth. And I think it's got to do with who passed away first, where we are buried here in Dublin or buried in Forsyth. And there's a couple lots still available on my mother and daddy's property down there. So don't pass away first. I'm very humble and very appreciative. I thank you very much. This is something that I never dreamed about. 55 years ago, I never dreamed I'd come back talking and doing something about something I did 55 years ago. Thank you very much.
And I wish I was kind of like Mr. Stewart. He was here when I got here. But I guess we've experienced a lot of people in our life. Richard Paul was one of the ones that I really admired a lot. He played football, he was an end, and he also played basketball. And he was very good at both. I can remember, I believe it was at Alto. Alto is one of those places that one of those schools that we played. Now, this school was a kind of on the edge. Seemed like to me it might have been a prison or something. It was a good school. They played good football, and we played everybody. We didn't pick them. So we could always count on Paulo to, come through with something all the time. You had Sheffield, Miller Jones, and also Richard. And they were very good with each other. I remember one play that we had in our repertoire of plays, end round zero. End right Ziad. Okay? That was all the ends we get on the right side. And we have Big Chop Edmonds. Some of you will remember him. Yeah. Big Chop. Every once in a while we get on the tight, we give the ball to Chop. Okay? Remember all the ends on the outside. We give the ball to Chop, and let me on 5, 10 yards, that's all we needed. Not for a touchdown, but more than likely for a first down. Then we give it to Paulo. The next time, in a pass off of the same set. And it was always a touchdown and a rah-rah and a good time for that time. We won several football games that way. Richard certainly has always been a good person. And at this particular time, I'm going to call him up here and let him.
Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah, okay, I got it. Good evening. I thank God for being here, from the support of my family and friends. And I thank him very much. Let me thankful for the Old County coaches, especially late Mr. Richard Johnson, coach and now commissioner, Mr. Roscoe Bry, for picking a freshman, having the confidence in picking a freshman to start, and I thank them very much for that. My teammates, especially Mr. Jerry Chapman. Is Jerry Chapman in the house? Yeah. Jerry, will you stand up, please? Let everybody see. Thank you, Jerry, for still got my 6. Thank the Old County alumni for picking me among my peers, and I thank them. And as I heard about, thank Ms. Holmes, Coach Holmes, and the Touchdown Club for creating the Hall of Fame. This is a wonderful thing for Dublin. I am very honored to be chosen to the Hall of Fame, and I thank y'all very much. Good evening.
Well, we have a lot of people who are from Dublin, and first of all, I'm not from Dublin. I'm from way down in South Lawrence County. And I didn't come to Dublin until 1960, and I really did not know what to expect. Even though my brother and sister had attended, till you get there yourself, you're just really not sure. But I can tell you there's no place that I've ever been that I've enjoyed being there more than being in Dublin, Georgia. I came along, and of course I had the privilege of going with my older brother, and so I had the privilege of watching the 1959 team play. And they were pretty good. I believe they managed to win the state championship. And then the 60 team came along. And they were pretty good, and they won the state championship. We had this new coach in town, Coach Williams, and a lot of folks said he was a pretty good coach. And it was kind of like, we just keep on winning the state championship every year. I mean, what had changed? And, of course, as you know, life doesn't come with many guarantees. So I was in the part is that we were kind of the disappointing class. We did okay, but no state championship. Well, we come along a second year. And again, a pretty good football season, but no state championship. And unfortunately, what had happened at Dublin is we had changed the standard. And Dublin expected us to be state champions, not just good, but to be the best. Well, the thing is, of course, about great coaches. If you go back and talk about the 59 and 1960 teams, if somebody had to talk about one person, that one person would be Tennyson Coleman. But, of course, we know that Tennyson only played one position, and I'm figuring probably there were 21 other guys out there or so who played the other positions. And the thing about Dublin was our football tradition was a team, and everybody played. And I think the Oconee guys sort of spoke the same thing here, right? But how great it was, except the fact is that we didn't win. Well, it's not that Coach Williams got dumb. It's just the way things are. Sometimes you don't have magic, and you can't make things work the way you want them to work. Well, history is a very interesting type thing, and what you really need is we needed another Tennyson Coleman. The bad news is we didn't have one. But we had something that for some reason Coach Williams was able to see, that we had an opportunity to make Dublin football better than it had ever been before. So he could see things that other people couldn't see. There's one thing that he knew that we did not know, is that he knew that Tom Perry, finally, his senior year, now I'd like to know the story behind this because I'm sure it's a very interesting one, is Tom decided that, yes, he would play quarterback for the Dublin football team. And I'm thinking that Coach Williams, being as smart as he was, he had figured out that Tom was a pretty decent quarterback, and since we didn't have Tennyson Coleman, maybe we needed to throw the ball. Well, obviously, if you're going to throw the ball, you got to have somebody to catch it. And talk with Robbie about this. One of the things that he talked about was the fact is that he really didn't quite understand what was going on either. So when we were in school, we had 6-period PE, where all of the varsity athletes took PE 6-period, so we could kind of do a few things a little bit and maybe prepare for some things without actually interfering with class. But primarily, it put all the varsity athletes in class together, that 6-period, which was a wonderful part of our overall program. And I was asking Robbie about how this got into things. And I want to tell you a little bit about Robbie. You need to know about him. Pretty interesting fellow. Happens to be my best friend. He was an extraordinary athlete. He was very gifted. He played sort of an average golfer, but he was a pretty good golfer. A pole vaulter, pretty good. Ran the mile and the 2-mile, not so bad. Threw the discus. He was pretty good. Now, one thing that he was not, even though he wore the uniform, he was not a basketball player. And I don't think that would hurt his feelings if he knew I'd said that. But he was not a basketball player. And it looked like the best we could do was Robbie, at his very best, was going to be a real good third-string running back. He was too small. He was kind of slow. And he didn't like being a running back so much because every time he ran up there, people like Charles over there would hit him real hard and knock him down. And Robbie wasn't a real knock-em, sock-em kind of guy. But then the world changed one day. 6-period PE. Coach Williams comes out and says, Robbie, I need for you to come with me out to the football field. So they go out. Sit down. What I want you to do is I want you to go down about 10 yards, turn around real fast. I'm going to throw the ball to you and see if you can catch it. So they go out. Robbie goes down 10 yards, comes out. Coach Williams throws the ball to him. Robbie caught it. I said, okay, let's do it again. Only this time I want you to go down about 20 yards, and I'm going to throw the ball to you, and you try to catch it. So he goes down about 20 yards. He throws the ball to Robbie. Robbie caught it. He said, now, Robbie, we're going to do things differently next year, and you're going to be our wide receiver. And Robbie shook it, nodded as they were going in. He said, Coach, I got one question. What's a wide receiver? Well, very quickly, he come to understand what a wide receiver was. With Tom and Robbie, and that whole great Dublin football team, things sort of happened. We didn't have a perfect season. Okay? We didn't have a perfect season. Did not have a perfect record. But we did have a perfect ending to our season. And something happened that was supposed to happen. And that year, we won the state championship. But Robbie said, vitally important, okay, that everybody understands, is that it was not about him. It was about him and Tom. It was about him and his team. It was about Coach Williams and all of his other coaches. Now, if you have to understand Dublin football at this time, you have to realize that it was about the whole school. It was about the whole city and everybody here. Because in those days, going to the football game meant Dublin shut down. And everybody went to the game. Robbie received a lot of honors. He was All-State, Honorable Mention, All-America. Went on, played football at Furman. Was really an excellent wide receiver. And probably could have played pros except for that one basic thing. He just didn't meet the basic prototype. He wasn't quite big enough. He wasn't quite fast enough. But I don't think anybody anywhere could have ever played wide receiver any better than Robbie did. And he really was honored to be considered for this, and he's very sorry that he could not be here tonight. But we'll do some things for him in just a minute, and maybe you can get to see what he looks like. You got a trophy around here? Here we go. Robbie Hunt. Thank you very much.
Being here in front of you guys is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Dublin High School has meant a lot to all of us, and I know you guys, Oconee, have the same thing. But as you've heard from all the speakers here, you've heard of people talking about a team. You've heard people talking about this. You're talking about Dublin High School. You're talking about participation. You're talking about growing. You're talking about going on through life. You're talking about a lot of stuff here. And it's really, really wonderful stuff. It's really good stuff. And it's gone on through the years to my son, your son, your son, your son, a lot of you guys here. I mean, it's been a really wonderful trip. But I didn't know that you had poetic license to kind of talk about certain things. I was not able to make it last year, and it kind of didn't know kind of what to expect. But I'm here to say some things about a guy that he's the next inductee into the Dublin Touchdown Club Hall of Fame, and his name is Chandler Maurice Beasley. Again with Mike, Bill, all of us, Johnny. Chan's Dublin High School football career, it started when his family moved from Dexter, Georgia, to Ramsey Street, if anybody knows where Ramsey Street is. And they, Mr. Beasley, Miss Betty, brought 4 sons to Dublin High School. Scott, the oldest, Chan, Danny, and the youngest, Willie. All of these guys played football. They played basketball. They played golf. Well, not very well. That was quite impressive, I'm sure. But they played baseball. And, of course, they had to run the mandatory track, which you all remember. You had to do that. If you played football, you had to run track. But his career actually in Dublin started in the 9th grade as a member of the B team, if you will, or the 9th grade. And as our season ended, he got moved up to the big boy league. He got moved up to the varsity. And he played in 2 championship games with the varsity as a freshman in high school, which is basically unheard of these days. Or it is heard of these days. But back then it was unheard of. And his career at Dublin High School has fathomed a lot of stuff as far as athletics, and we will not talk about academics because he actually went to Dublin High School and the University of South Carolina, which we shall not speak a lot of. But as a successful 9th grader, he did really well in moving up to the varsity, and he became a 3-year starter. He played running back. He played defensive back. He played linebacker. He was not a Mike Cauley. He didn't play every position on the team, but he was there when Dublin High School needed him. He was quite the athlete, quite the person. As we move along in his career, it's kind of funny that you talk about folks, but playing with the big boys as he did, he's the guy that could tote the rock. He could carry it. I mean, he knew how to play offensive backfield. I mean, he'd slash up, he'd run up the middle, he'd slash off the end, he'd run around everybody there. So therefore, at some particular point, we named him Pupwood Chan Beasley, because he could actually bring the wood, if people know about bringing the wood. He brought the wood, but working for the Belote family and their wood company didn't hurt him much either. He had a great name. I thought Pupwood Chan Beasley was the best that ever walked. I really did. But with this honor and privilege, playing with him, alongside of him, not only in 4 years in high school ball, but 4 years at college at the University of South Carolina, you kind of get to know a guy. You kind of get to know where he comes from, what he's doing, where he's going. And he had it all. He did. I'm not going to talk about college. I thought this was a kind of a high school thing here. But he was a damn great player in college. He did a great job. He represented Dublin well in everything that he did. With all this honor and privilege that I have being up here and talking about Chan, I don't want to take poetic license in telling stories and having some kind of stories about somebody kind of scares you, when you get up here and you start talking about folks. So I don't want to take any poetic license, but there's only one story I can kind of present here in public, and with ladies involved and young children and to-be children. But if you played high school football in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, you know that if you took water, you were a wussy. You were a total wuss. So they only gave us water one time a day at half of the practice, and they brought out 24 cups. We're talking about cups. Folks, we're talking about cups. 24 of them. And Chan, bless his sweet little heart, would be the first in line every time that you got this water. And he'd be the first one to return his cup. But that would be only because we had 23 on the team, and there was an extra cup to be had. So it was not a question of did he do it once, but did he do it every time? And that was it. So that's the only poetic license I can give here. But he was quite the individual. Oh, I dropped everything. Again, I can't walk or talk. But Chan's senior year, he was elected co-captain of our 1968 team. Our team went 27-6-1 respectively. Chan played in 2 region championships and 2 sectional championships. He was named to the all-Middle Georgia team, the all-Lawrence County team, the all this, that, and the other team here locally. And he was on the prep honor roll many times. He was on the all-state team and the all-Middle Georgia team. But I think his greatest honor, which only goes to him and to the Dublin High School football team, was the fact that he was named the AA Atlanta Journal-Constitution Back of the Year, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful honor for him, his family, and the Dublin High School group. And I think everybody here is part of the group. But after he received the AA Back of the Year, later that summer he went on to play in the All-Star game in Macon, Georgia. He was there with many of the finer athletes in the state, did a great job, and won the game, which was quite the deal at that time. But as he moved on, he moved from Dublin, Georgia, moved to the University of South Carolina to finish his college career. I did not want to go into his college stuff because I thought we might could even do that at a later date because he was a fine player. But not only was he a fine player, folks, he was a fine friend and is a fine friend. And I respect him a lot. I followed him all my life. I care for him. I love him. And at this time, I'd like to ask his brother to come up and receive his award, Scott Beasley.
Very much. What Greg says is very true about Dublin High School athletics, as far back as we can go, and that it's all about the team, and it's all about the town, and it's all about the school and your classmates and everybody that you ever came in contact with. And it didn't just have to be the football team. It could be the students, it could be the band, it could be the administration. It was everybody. I'm going to tell you one story. How many remember half-line practice? When you got at practice and you had half-line scrimmage. One side of the offensive line was on against the other side on the defensive line. Well, we had a practice one day under Don Denny, and Chan was on the defensive side of the ball. I was on the offensive side. Chan missed an assignment, and there was a coaching listening time. Offense, take a knee. Defense, Chan, come here. And Chan was the bulk of the coaching. And it lasted just a few minutes. And so we go to the next play, and Don Denning calls what we had then was a quick pass to the tight end. Unfortunately, I caught the ball. Chan didn't like to be chewed out, and he took it out on me. It was the hardest lick I had in high school or college football. I will tell you, he hit me, and I said, "Hold up, bud." He says, "I ain't your bud today." That's the way my brother played. He'd run hard, he'd play hard, and he hit hard. And he played that all the way through college, and that's the way he did it. Presently, Chan has an illness that prevents him from being here tonight, and he wishes that he could be. And I am so sorry. I would hope that next year he could return and talk to you guys, and in life he could run hard, play hard, and hit hard. I really do. On behalf of my nephew, Chandler Beasley III, and my niece, Jenna D., and also my father, who at 90 years old can still talk Dublin High School football, and actually went to 2 ball games last year with the help of the VA Center and the sitting area that Dublin High School has at the football stadium. And all of my family, I thank the Dublin football community and especially the Dublin Touchdown Club for this honor bestowed upon my brother. Thank you very much. Applause for that.
I agreed to do this last night, so I'm going to sort of wing it. But I did graduate with Derek. And first thing I'll say is that I'm going to, by being here, I'm probably going to upset a few of our teammates, most of the guys that play on the line with me, because we've been telling Derek the whole time that he was just an above-average quarterback, and we were a great offensive line. So now, in public, I'm going to have to say that it was mostly Derek. Derek was one of the first people that I met when our family moved to Dublin. We moved to Dublin when I was in the 7th grade, and I went to Dublin Junior High, and I had every class with Derek. We had band together, PE together. We played junior high football together. His mom taught me. I think she hit me with a wiffle ball bat one time when I did something wrong. I don't know what it was. But I got to know Derek early upon coming, and really enjoyed having him as a teammate, as a classmate. Everybody knows that was around and watched football during those years what a great athlete and player Derek was. I mean, it's just, I know that I don't have his stats recorded. I know he was all state and all everything, heavily recruited. And that's just, you couldn't have been around and not know that about Derek. He was the star of our football team. I remember one time Coach Hafner coming down from Georgia, and he wanted to talk to me. And Dad had played up there, and it turns out that was the only reason he wanted to talk to me. He said, "Hey, I saw you on film. You looked really good in that game. Have you seen Derek?" So that was my extent of talking to Georgia. But what a lot of people don't know about Derek is that he was also a great student. He always had his homework. He just did what you're supposed to do. He was a good example for everybody on the team. I don't know if it was because he was scared of his mom, but I think eventually it was because he realized what he had and realized that he had potential. But at some point, we all worked hard during those times because we enjoyed school and we enjoyed football. But at some point, Derek started doing more than the rest of us. He was the first one to get up, after he got knocked down in the Oklahoma drill. He was the first one back in line. He was certainly fast, but there were a couple of guys faster than Derek on the team. But by the time we got through with wind sprints, Derek was the first one back on every sprint. He was in better shape, and he was pushing himself harder, trying to do everything he could. I remember after football practice, probably starting by the 10th grade or at least by the 11th grade, we would all be showered, dressed, going out to the parking lot, up out of that dungeon of a locker room. And Derek was just coming in because after practice was over, he went and ran some more sprints and ran a mile and, got some more workout time in after we were all through. And so, sure, Derek's a great athlete. He probably would have done a lot of the things that he did anyway, but he also worked very hard to get all the things that he achieved. I remember after going up to Georgia during the springtime and watching Derek after he had committed, standing there with Dad. We played for my dad too. Dad was sitting there next to Coach Dooley, and I think a lot of Coach Dooley and his perception, and he sat there and told my dad, he said, "We've never signed a better athlete than that kid," and that's what he said about Derek. I guess if you want to tell a story about Derek, when we were in junior high, believe it or not, I was the fullback and Derek was on the line, and that was sort of backwards. But to be honest, a fullback in Dublin junior high was really an extra lineman anyway. We knew Derek, was just in the wrong place. The kids knew it first. Before practice, he would throw the ball a mile. I mean, he could throw it. I don't have a whole football field. I mean, even when he was that young. And so we all talked to Derek and said, "Go tell the coach," and I'm not going to say who was the coach, "to let you play quarterback. You'd be great at quarterback." And so Derek did. He went and told the coach. He said, "Let me have a chance to try out for quarterback." And the coach at the time said, "Get on back to that line where you belong." So, he hadn't been realized yet. But I talked to Dad about it, and I'm taking credit for discovering Derek. And told him, said, "Look, you need to pay attention to what Derek Harris can do. He's faster than us, and he can throw the ball hard and hit hard." And sure enough, once the high school got to look at him, he was our quarterback from then on. He just was fit for that job. That was if you could order a football quarterback and put it together, that's what you would order. You would order Derek Harris. I don't know what Derek's individual average rushing, he might know rushing average was, but I know that the offense that we ran, that Derek ran in high school, was averaging over 7 yards a carry. And if anybody keeps up with stats, I don't know if that's the best, but it's got to be close. I mean, we would quarterback sneak it and he'd get 15 yards when we needed 2 inches. Just you could always count on Derek to find a way to do it. He could sit on the bench down at the Shamrock Bowl, sitting down and throw the ball across the field up into the stands on the visitor side. I just never seen anything like it. So I'll say that, from my perspective as a teammate and as a classmate, not just because he's such a great athlete and just a perfect fit for a football team, but because of the full package. I mean, the example that he set for all of us, just the hard worker. I mean, great sense of humor. Derek, we were always laughing about something at practice. We all got very close, But I can't say this about myself or all the other guys, but Derek was laughing, but never at anybody's expense, and so he was just a good leader. So, like I said, I was kind of caught off guard to get called to stand in for Coach Davis. My dad would have been glad to come, but he was out of town as well. But I think that certainly Derek deserves any award that anybody can give him.
Y'all be patient with me. First and foremost, giving honor to my personal Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It is a privilege and an honor to represent what I feel is probably one of the best teams Dublin had that did not win it all. But there's a reason why we were that way. And Oconee High School, testament to Coach Stroman, Coach Richard Johnson, Coach Brower, Roscoe Brower that you've seen here. They won championships too. And they set a precedent for excellence here in Dublin. I remember when I had the football camp, Coach Holmes can remember distinctively. He was telling me at the time that he wanted to put together a Hall of Fame for Dublin. I played because I saw my brother play. My brother Byron Harris, my brother Adrian Harris. Adrian was one of the best athletes that I've ever seen go on and walk on at Grambling State University. He was a basketball player at Dublin. He also played football. My brother Byron, soaking wet, was probably 5'6", 155 pounds. But whenever they needed 2 inches, they would hand it to him, Coach Leo Carvallis, and that team, which was one of the best teams that I've ever seen. Hard-nosed Tony Godden to win the University of South Carolina, Scott Hagler at South Carolina. But I saw those guys play before me, and I saw what Byron had to go through when my dad had to put him in the bathtub because he was hurting so bad from all those licks from Perry and Swainsboro, the tough teams at Americus, our arch rivals. And just a lot of memories and a lot of reasons why I never wanted to play football. I just wanted to play because they beat up on my brother so bad. And my brother Cedric, who is an actor, he's at the Pentagon now as a radiologist. But he was an actor at the Thespian Group in Dublin. And he went on to, do some things in Hollywood for a couple of years. I just took an example from him and just being excellent at whatever you choose to do. And then you got this little community. Now, I would be amiss if I didn't mention this, and I'm no activist or anything like that, but I'm very proud to be a Dublinite. Lawrence County and Dublin shaped who I am, and it's very important to mention this in the light of the Clippers owners, Mr. Sterling, and some of the comments that we heard that were pretty ugly and, bad and misguided. I will tell you one thing. Coach Travis Davis, G. Kelly Sargent, my offensive coordinator, Ken Whidden, Clint Whidden's dad, offensive line coach, Alan Yawk, who was the wide receiver and running back coach, Richard Johnson, formerly of Oconee High School, our defensive backfield coach at Dublin, and a host of other people. Our teammates, Clint, that played with you, some of the best linemen that I've ever seen, playing at Georgia and playing at Western Carolina University. And some of those guys went to the league. There were 2 or 3 of them that should have been in the league off that line. So when you look at all of that took place with the position of playing quarterback in the Deep South, as you know, Sometimes things can get ugly. People say hurtful things, mean things, uneducated things, unwise things. But I can be a testament to tell you this, and this is from the bottom of my heart. None of that got to me because of those people like Clint Whidden, Coach Sargent, my offensive coordinator, that called those pass plays. Coach Yock, who gave me the confidence to say, you can be a leader. You can think. You can call plays. You can make it happen. Coach Richard Johnson, who just said, agile, mobile, and hostile, Derek. Get it done. And then it was the Dublin community. You guys out there, you know, those students that went to Dublin at the time that said, Derek, you guys can win it. Go all the way. None of that stuff, those isms hit me in this community. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. To move it forward and not to take up too much time, legacy. I had my daughter read out legacy, the definition. She came up with one that I like. It was the third one that she picked up. My youngest daughter, Asia. Stand up, Asia. Stand up, Asia. My eldest daughter, Africa. Stand up. Right there. My goddaughter, Joniqua, from the Caribbean islands. Mama, sit down. I'll talk about you later. And then there's my wife, Miss Docia. My wife, please stand up. Miss Docia Harris. Beautiful wife. But, Mama, I'll talk about you later. Hold on. I'm going to finish with you, okay? Legacy means to me something where one's life and what one has done lives on long after they're gone. And you look at these guys here. I heard about you, Rashard. You know about Eric Walden. All these players that came before us, the shoulders that we stood upon, that played here. That's legacy. It means something. I remember Coach Snipes here. I saw him at the door, and Coach Snipes was sitting up here telling me about when I tried out for recreational baseball. And he started calling off Paul Foster and David Tuberville. And I was like, how did you remember? To myself, I could not believe that he could remember all these names. And he's been coaching for umpteen years. And he remembered me as a little scrawny kid trying to play baseball. And I didn't know anything about baseball, but I learned how to compete because of that man right there.
He was #1 draft pick in Little League Baseball. When we got him, I looked over at the Sister Tuberville. I said, boy, we done got this we need to win this championship.
So he told me that story, and I was like, I told him to Clint, I said, can you believe he still remembers that? Is that incredible? So it's just relationships like that in this community that is very unique. I mean, there are other football communities and high school football teams around the state, Valdosta and Athens, Clark Central, and, you know, you've got tons of them. But I really do feel like Dublin is a special place. Whenever I come back here, it's always smiles. It's always me trying to travel around and see what they built new or what came, the new high school. Did y'all see the new high school with the solar panels and all? That was impressive to me. Most schools don't do that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I'm just amazed every time I come here. But I think about legacy and what goes into building a legacy. It's who you are as a person. My father, who is long gone and deceased, he was a military war veteran. What did he teach me? He taught me discipline. He very rarely ever told me that he loved me. Very rarely ever told any of his sons, because I was the youngest of four sons, and he very rarely did that. But I remember when he passed away, I transferred from the University of Georgia to Western Carolina up in Cullowhee, North Carolina. And we went back to play Georgia, and, you know, Coach Dooley and everybody said all these nice things about me. And we got beat 56-0. Clint was a witness. But I had a decent game. I was like 4 for 6, 66 yards. And Lonnie Galloway, backup quarterback, played about 2 quarters, and I played the other 2 quarters. And they carried me off Sanford Stadium's field. And there's very few people that got carried off. I think Dooley was one, and I was the other one. And it was because of the teammates and because of what they, I guess, saw in me. And I couldn't do nothing but cry All I did was cry. I couldn't. It was just a remarkable feeling. And what I thought about was my dad, who taught me discipline. He taught me about hard work. He was a military war veteran that pretty much got froze over in the Korean War. My mom can attest to it. He succumbed to a lot of that because of his lungs being frozen. And he said to me a week before that game, he said, son, I won't be able to make it to that game. He loved Georgia Bulldog football. In fact, I signed because of him there at Georgia. Don't tell anybody, but I wanted to go to Tech. No hard feelings in here. But as I played the G-Day game 3 weeks ago and threw a couple of touchdowns in the flag football game, I remembered between the hedges my dad. And all I could remember him saying is, son, it doesn't matter where you go on this earth. The only thing that matters is what you do when you get there. All right. You remember that. And a week later, he passed away. And that's who I am. My mom, stand up. Here comes your time. Go ahead, stand up, Mom. Miss Kathleen Harris. Y'all give her a round of applause. Miss Kathleen Harris taught in the Dublin city school system for how many years, Mom? How many? 5? You don't say it too loud now. She's retired 35 years in the Dublin city school system. Now, everybody knows, Clint talks about it. I mean, everybody that went through Dublin city school system knows Kathleen Harris. If you want to know what she's about discipline, she's about learning. One thing I can attest to her is she never had to check my report card because she knew what was up. It was going to have A's and some B's, but it's going to be mostly A's. And it better be that way, and it better stay that way. My mom gave me love. She gave me life. And she's still here to love on. So I love you, Mom. Legacy, who you're made of, your obstacles that stand in your way. Too short, too slow. Clint says I was fast. I don't think 4.7 was very fast, but I guess it was back then for a quarterback. I didn't run anyway. So we had what I believe to be the best running back I've ever played with or against on any level in R.W. James. And I've played against Emmitt Smith at Florida, Sterling Sharp, University of South Carolina, Tommy Hodson, LSU, Willie Williams, Western Carolina, Morris Lewis, UGA, a linebacker, Lars Tate, Keith Henderson, Tim Worley. I can reel off a bunch of names. And I've never seen a better running back than R.W. and Willie Spikes, better wide receiver than Arnold Lee. Ralph Mitchell, who lives up in Atlanta now, one of the fastest human beings I've ever seen in my life. Defensively, we had Warren Polly Brown, Clint, you remember him? James Burney, Paul Baker. Just tons of athletes. Greg Fuqua. We did all of that, went 11-0 that year. And R.W. and Willie got hurt, our starting backfield. I think we had another guy get hurt, tight end, Steve Powell. So we were playing with backups on offense, and we wound up losing. That was back when you had to play everybody twice. Coach Bars, you remember, we had to play y'all again from Crisp County. Oh, by the way, Coach Bars, stand up, please. Please stand up. Coach Sam Bars, one of the toughest football teams I've ever faced is Crisp County, the Cougars. And he was one of the ones, Scotty Hamilton, I was telling him, one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen that I emulated. Just a ton of people that came before you that showed you that obstacles, no matter how far, no matter how short you may be, no matter how slow, no matter what people say about you, what they think about you, the only thing that really matters is what you think about yourself and what your teammates think about you. And the last thing I'll mention before I close is being able to triumph and have success. For me, it was important to be academically strong as well as athletically strong. Because when you crack an ankle or pop a Achilles tendon or tear a patella tendon and you can't do this game that you love so much anymore, you got to have something to fall back on. So for any youngsters that are listening to my voice, be a complete person. Be a man, be a young lady. Do what you know how to do best, which is represent your family and represent yourself and represent your creator as best you can. Because at the end of the day, that's who you are. That's what's going to take you over. Not how much money you have, not how much fame you may have, but who you are, the metal of who you are. And I heard someone say this, but I thought of this and I wrote this down. We succeed whenever we see success in others that surround us. And so with that team, I'm nothing. if it wasn't for that guy right there that introduced me.
When Roger called me and asked me to do this, I said, oh, there'll be a few people there. My goodness, Roger, what a tremendous thing you've got going. My hat's off to you, buddy. First class. I mean that. You got a community that's always been first class and done everything this community does is first class. Following Derek, I told Derek, the Smith guys, and Keith, and of course Eric, I said, man, I got some of the kids I coached, and I chased one for 4 years when I was at Chris County, and Derek was a quarterback over here. And, boy, thank God Travis didn't run the veer or run the quarterback draw. All he did was run the quarterback sneak for about 7-8 yards of carry. You know, one of the things my granddaddy used to say, that young man comes from good stock. Everybody knows what that means. But, Derek, you came from good stock, buddy. You're a class act, and I want to tell you that, too. When Roger called me and asked me to do this, he said, would you come present Ben Claxton? And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, and, you know, there's not a lot of stats for offensive linemen, but I'll tell you what, all you skilled people, and Derek alluded to it a little bit, all you skilled people, all you running backs, all you what we call pretty boys in the business, I guarantee you one thing, you wanted Ben Claxton on your offensive line, I'll go ahead and tell you that. Ben had what a lot of coaches, and there's a lot of coaches in this room, ex-coaches. One of the things that Ben had, he had some nasty to him. And I used to have to get out and give you one example of it. We're watching film one day, and on Monday, we always showed the film of Friday night's game, and then we'd go out and practice. Well, I'd watched it all weekend, and I had a little laser pointer so I could spot, and it was like a little red light on it. Y'all know what a laser is. Anyway, when somebody did something good, I'd point it and wave it and get everybody's attention. And I said, Ben, what is this? He said, what, Coach? And I stopped, and we could rewind that film back and forth, and all you football guys know what I'm talking about, back and forth. And I looked down, and Ben's in the pile, and some of the kids said, Coach, you just don't know Ben like I know him. And I said, what do you mean? He said, Coach, he's sneaky. And I said, oh, I never saw that about him. Well, I looked down in the pile. This is in the game film now. And he's down there and he's doing this number. I said, Ben, what are you doing? I don't want him to, any football coach anywhere in America will tell you, he don't want his kids being dirty, but he wants them being nasty. Okay? And I love the nasty. I said, now, Ben, I'm going to tell you this. If you get caught, you're going to pay. And pay was Monday afternoon after practice, some running belly flops, that kind of deal. But Ben was all-state, 3-year starter for me, signed with Ole Miss. I want to tell you what I consider a tragic story about Ben. I called when I was pushing Ben on coaches and trying to get him to come look at him and come see him. I called Georgia and Georgia Tech. They weren't hard to give me the time of day. I told, I believe it was Jim Donnan, was coach at Georgia then. I said, Coach, he's going to line up and whip your tail one day if somebody will give this boy a chance. And rest is history. He goes out to Ole Miss, and things worked out great for him because he goes to Ole Miss. And he snapped for one of the premier quarterbacks in the NFL right now for 3 years. Young man was a a physical football player, by far the best offensive lineman I've ever coached. Smart. His college offensive line coach told me, Hugh Nall, who played at Georgia, he was known to be real, real tough. He loved that nasty side to him. And I was at a clinic one time, and we were talking, and I said, how's Ben doing? And this was after his redshirt year. He said, Sam, don't tell him this, but I'm counting on him to start next year. I said, really? He said, Sammy's smart, highly intelligent, knows all our calls. I'm planning on him starting. And don't tell him that because I'm gonna keep him hungry. I said, okay. He did. He ended up starting. But a kid, you never had to worry about you running backs, quarterbacks. You never had to worry about him getting the job done. He played in all-star games. His offensive line coach in the all-star game said, Ole Miss stole one out of Georgia. And they did, whether it was Georgia, Georgia Tech. I know his daddy, Brother Claxton, all of us know him. I know he's really, really proud of this moment, and I am too. And Nancy, I think you're going to accept the award for Ben. Is that right? If you come on up, please.
Well, just to give you the other side, as much as I supported Ben in his football, I was bound and determined to make a decent pianist out of him. And I think probably he played such good football because he was thinking he was tackling his mother. On the serious side, this is certainly a special event. Tremendous honor. Beautiful trophy. I only wish Ben could be here to receive it, but his mother's so very proud, and it's quite an honor for me to be able to receive it for him. I did talk to him a couple of hours ago, and he said, Mom, please tell them why I'm not there. That being that I'm in the middle of finals, and you would kill me if I left. Actually, he is finishing his second year in law school, and he is in the middle of finals, or he would be here. I'm also extremely proud to be here. I thank you for this honor for him. He wanted me to express that to you. This is certainly tremendous, and we are so grateful. Thank you so much.
I've got the opportunity to be here and talk about a few young men that have afforded me the opportunity to be able to stay in Dublin, Georgia, okay? Because we all know that a football coach is only as good as the players that he has playing for him. And I've been very fortunate since I've been here to coach not only some great football players, but I think some tremendous young men. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's not easy being a football coach. It's not easy to be a lot of things, I understand. But it's not easy to be a football coach. Because sometimes I have to be like their dad, and I got to be on their tails when they're not doing right. So I spend more time with a lot of them than their parents do. And I've got to figure out what buttons to push to try to get them to excel. But yet then again, not make them feel like they're special even when they are. Some players have got it more than others. But as Derek said a minute ago, this is nothing more than a team game. And you know, a baseball team can put a guy out there on the mound that can throw that thing up there at 92, 93, 94, and they're going to win a lot of games. You can take a basketball team and put a 6'10" kid out there in the paint that's pretty good, and I'm talking high school, and win a lot of games. You can take one great football player and put him on the field and go 0-10. Because it's a team game.
In 2002, I got a chance to come to Dublin. Never heard of it. Never heard of it. And we drove to Dublin. I drove to Dublin, Georgia, against my wife's wishes, because I had been to 14 different schools in the 5 previous years trying to get a job in Georgia. And I could get to the final 2 or 3, come back the second time. And I didn't get a job. And the only reason I got the one in Dublin, Georgia, is because it was the last week of June and nobody else would take it. Now, that's the facts. I know it. I have no doubt in my mind that's why. And I'm going to get a chance to talk about some young men that are here. But the first time I got to meet those guys, will you take this before I break it? Like I said, I'd never been here. I left at 1:30 in the morning because we didn't have the money to pay for a hotel room. Had a peanut butter and jelly sandwiches packed in the car. Because she said, all you're going to do is blow another $300 or $400 and we ain't got it. And she was right. But I drive down here all night. It's about a 6.5-hour drive. And I get down here and start driving around town. Wanted to see if there's anything in the newspaper about Dublin sports. Ride through the community and see what's going on. Look at the facilities. Just try to get a feel for Dublin. So I pull in and I stopped at the Shamrock Bowl. It was beautiful. Now, a lot of that, without question, Coach Sam Bars had those facilities phenomenal. And they were nice. But see, I soon found out, though, that the people in Dublin, in the 1961, I think, or 60, went out and borrowed the money, individuals, at the bank, and paid the notes back themselves to build the Shamrock Bowl. Might be $5 a month, but they were making payments. When that's going on, the people there have got to care about the product. So I pull up and I walk down through there, and all these suckers over here was on the paint crew. The coach that was in charge of the paint crew was painting. His daughter was painting. And their lazy tails were sitting over on the back end of a trailer doing nothing. Now, that's the truth. And they know it right now. And I've got a coat on and didn't have my tie on at that time because I hate to wear one. Okay? But I thought I'd wear one tonight. But I walk down there and I see these guys. Boy, they look like some good players. A whole lot better than I had where I was. Okay? And I go down there and I ask these guys, boy, it's a beautiful stadium here. Yes, sir. I said, y'all ever fill it up? They started laughing. They said, have you lost your mind? I said, they might have filled it up before, but we don't fill it up no more. I said, boy, it'd be nice to fill it up. Now, it was after before Richard and after Quintez and Eric. But in 2006, when we played Charlton County, that sucker was full. Okay? So, yeah, you can fill it up. You can fill it up. And I'm going to be quite frank with you. Part of the reason that I wanted to start a Hall of Fame is because some of our people in this community are forgetting what it meant to them. They're forgetting what this great game of football did for a lot of successful people that have moved on. It's bad that we got kids now they're not going to remember that Xbox game they played, folks. They're not going to remember it. But you've heard everybody that stood up here and ever been a part of this great game tell you what a lasting experience it's had on their life. I've had a few people call me and talk to me about other individuals they think should be in this Hall of Fame. And I hope one day they are. We don't want everybody to go in 1 year. I want this thing to be going on when we're gone. Still remembering the good old days. Because all of us in here that's getting older, the good old days ain't now. And when our kids get to be our age, the good old days ain't going to be the end of them. It's going to be what we did that molded and shaped our lives. So that's the purpose of what we're doing here, on top of recognizing some great young men that have been a part of the Dublin history. The first guy that I'm going to talk about is Quintez Smith. Okay? If I can find his stuff and make sure that I've got this right. Okay? Quintez was my quarterback. We didn't get off to the greatest start. Because the first night I was there, Quintez showed up, and that sucker ran a 4.5. Woo! And I watched him drop back and throw the ball and do some things, and it was beautiful. I said, guys, this is the last week of June. We've got to put in a whole new offense, a whole new defense, and a whole new kicking game. So I need everybody here Monday through Thursday night from 7 to 9, because I was meeting with the staff all day. And then I want the players to come in that night, and we're going to put in a whole new offense, defense, and kicking game. The next night, the first night, there was about 50 kids there. The next night, it's time to practice. There was 20. And one of them that wasn't there was Quintez Smith. So the next night, he come bopping in. And I called him in my office, or he just stuck his head in the door. I don't remember which. I said, Tez. Yes, sir. I said, man, you're going to be a heck of a DB. He said, you going to let me play defense? I said, you're darn right. I said, you're going to be a good wide receiver too. He said, wide receiver? I'm a quarterback. I said, don't no quarterback of mine skip practice. And you skipped practice last night. I said, I don't care. I said, see, if you skip practice when the season starts, I'll have to take up your equipment. So it's a whole lot easier for me to get rid of a wide receiver than it is a quarterback. He never missed again. I'll tell you one more funny story on him, and it applies to Eric. Folks, I promise you, when I got here, I'd never been here. John Strickland was on the staff. He'll back me up. I did not know when I got on the bus whether we were going north, south, east, or west to a game. I had no clue. I did not trade the film. I had an assistant do it. All I did was lock myself in that room and watch the film and make a game plan and try to figure out what we needed to do. That was it. Didn't have time to learn anything else. Figure out what he's going to take to push these kids' buttons. So we get in there, and I'm just putting guys in places because I don't know whether we're going to be any good or not. I don't know. And Quintez Smith, because of his burst and his quickness and his speed, was a guy that the first week of the season on our PAT field goal block team came off the edge. He's already rolling his head around over. He's coming off the edge to try to block PATs and field goals. Well, we keep winning. And all of a sudden, we won a great game, one of the most exciting games I've been a part of at Dublin, against Cedartown. It was a great win. and we're headed to the Georgia Dome. And all of a sudden, I get the feeling that, dang, we might win a state championship here. And you know what? They're going to call me the dumbest guy that's ever coached a game in my life if my quarterback breaks his hand trying to block a field goal. And on top of that, Casey Cullen had blocked 2 or 3 in practice the week before against us. And I didn't tell the coaches about it. It had just, it had happened at practice. We line up to block PAT field goals, and I said, hang on a minute. Tez, I want you to go corner. You got number 1 over here, man to man, and Casey, you come over here and come off the edge to block him. He took his helmet off, threw it down, and said, what in the heck have I done wrong? And we're getting ready to go to the Georgia Dome. I said, boy, if you ain't got that helmet on 25 seconds, your ass ain't getting on the bus. And I'm a little bit nervous. But I knew everything was under control when Eric Walden said, you better put it on because you know he's crazy. So that's a true story. I had no gray hair when I got here, and it was all gray, but after I got done dealing with those guys the first year. But it was a great group of guys. When I think about Quintez, he was a tremendous athlete that led a football team that had gone 4-6 the previous year to a 14-1 in the state championship game. He was not only a tremendous defensive player, but he was a tremendous offensive player. I think you had 11 interceptions, if I'm not mistaken. I couldn't find the stat sheet today. 11 interceptions his senior year. He threw for over 1,500 yards and ran for over 1,000. We were a pretty good team, but we didn't execute worth a darn. I don't go back and use those films to teach guys how to do what we do. They did it pretty good, okay, but they'd only done it for 3 months. They used a lot of natural talents. They were a hungry group of young men who wanted to do things and be successful, okay? In 2002, he was the Telegraph All-Middle Georgia Player of the Year. Not at all. I'm talking about the Player of the Year. In 2002, he was the AAA Associated Press Player of the Year in the state of Georgia. He was named, and he may not even know this, he was named to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution All-Decade Team in the 2000s. I don't know if you ever knew that or not, okay? But I found that today on the internet, so you can go look it up, okay? Well, hang on here a minute. I got the stats there. Led his team to the state championship. He went on, and he was very under-recruited. There's no question about it. But he went to UT Chattanooga, was co-freshman defensive player of the year in the Southern Conference. Had a great career there, and he ended up going and playing at Shaw University up in North Carolina his senior year, and he was a Division II All-American, named on 2 different squads, okay? He was a tremendous young man and fun to coach. I'm still very, very, very fond of this young man today because of his smile and because of his bounce, is what I like to call it. But Tez, come on up.
The helmet story is not what it's all built up to be. The thing is about the helmet story, I mean, as anyone would know, if you want to win, you're a competitor. I wanted to win. We're going to the dome. I want to win. It came out the wrong way as far as the helmet flying. It did.
You always know about it.
But it came out the wrong way. So that's the story behind the helmet thing. But, wow. Thank you. First and foremost, I want to thank the man upstairs. Without him, none of this would be possible at all. None of it. Secondly, I want to thank the Dublin Touchdown Club for inviting me here. Because when it was first introduced to me, the first thing I text back was a question mark to my mom and my brother. I'm like, huh? Me? I was like, why me? And they was like, well, what did you do? I'm like, quite honestly, man, there's a lot of people that's supposed to be here before me. Mr. Harris, Taylor, Snipes. I just feel as if that it's more people who should have been up here for me. So I'm like, why me? And I'm very humbled to say that I am part of this prestigious group. I really am. I really, truly am. Thirdly, I'd like to thank my parents. My parents, they're funny individuals because they always say, if you don't get your schoolwork, you don't play ball. And one year, I will admit it, I tested it. I tested that theory. I did. And you know what I did? I sat there and did not play ball. And you know in turn what they made me do? Go to every single game and sit in the stands and watch my classmates play basketball. From that point on, I made sure that grades came first, sports came second, no matter what. Take care of the classroom, please. I know I stand up here, and I'm be honest with you, I'm kind of nervous because I sit here and think about the past, my past, and all these stats that he read off. It's good and everything, but I was having a conversation with two women, and I asked them, I was like, hey, you know when you were small and you always thought, like, when I grow up, I want to do this, like your ultimate dream? One young lady was like, well, you know what? Yes, because I want to be successful, and I'm a successful person. She goes on to read about her financial group that she's starting up. And I was like, that's all right. The second lady was like, I knew from day one when I was 5, I wanted to be this pharmacist, and I'm a pharmacist now, and I'm doing well with myself. And they all looked at me, and I'm like, what? Why? Why me? It's like, so did you actually make your dreams come true? And then as I sat there at this dinner table, I was like, my first instinct was like, be down on myself and say no. But then I sat there and actually really sat there and thought about it. A few All-American selections, great family background. Did not win that championship ring, but I have other rings to make up for it. I want to say 6 records, and I still have people who ask me now to this day, like, do you know who you are? And my ultimate dream was make an impact on somebody else besides myself. And right now, my answer, when I sat there that night, I said, you know what? Yeah, I made my dream come true because I can look at someone else and they actually know who I am. And as Mr. Harris would say, legacy. And that's all I wanted to do, bring happiness to somebody else. So with that being said, thank you for allowing me to be part of this.
Folks, I'm going to tell you something. I have never, in 31 years, coached a football player that could impact a game like Rashard Smith. The bullet. I sit here and I think, when I say that, we were getting ready to play the guys over in Cochran, and Coach Bars was the coach. And the local paper asked Coach Bars something about Rashard. And I never saw Herschel Walker play. But I remember Coach Bars' quote was, I've only seen one individual that came close to impacting the game the way that Rashard Smith did, and that was Herschel Walker. the young man was a, gosh, Bullet, were you a 7th grader when I got here? 6th grader? And he used to run up and down the field, flipping balls up in there. Coach Barr, know what I'm talking about, 'cause he was doing it when he was here. They'd be getting ready to kick an extra point, and you'd look up, and this skinny kid running down the field, flipping balls up and catching them behind his back and doing all this and all that. Smiling all the time and doing great. Actually, the couple of those nights when there are only 20 players there, and this kid in the 6th grade, and I had him over there working quarterback with the 2nd or 3rd group just so I could have enough guys to run the place. And, gosh, was he really good. How good was he? His senior year, he intercepted 10 passes at cornerback, both his junior and his senior year on the defensive side. He was named the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Georgia Top 150. He had 30 interceptions in his high school career. Folks, 30. Now, I don't know, if you know this game, 30 interceptions in a career? It's unheard of. He served as the quarterback, passing for over 1,300 yards and rushed for over 997 in 2008. He returned 2 punts for touchdowns, 1 kickoff for a touchdown as a senior. Named the Georgia, now listen to this now. He was named the Georgia's Class AA Defensive Player of the Year in 2007 and 2008. And he was named the Georgia Class AA Offensive Player of the Year also in 2008. One by the coaches and one by the press. He was named the Player of the Year on both sides of the ball in the same year. There ain't nobody going to do any better than that now. He was first team All-State as a junior and a senior. Okay. He also played point guard on the basketball team. He has more state championship rings than anybody that's ever been at Dublin High School. Okay, he's got 3 of them, I think, Bullard. Is that right? Okay. I had the opportunity to take him to a 7-on-7 All-Star game. We had played up in Atlanta. The Falcons put it on. And did we win it that year or were we second? I don't know. But anyway, we took a team and went and played in New Orleans. Is that correct? We were playing in New Orleans. We had played 2 games. And a guy from the NFL came over to me and said, "Who's that kid?" So that's Rashard Smith. Now, you got to understand that they had players from all over the United States. He said, "Coach, that's the best player down here." I said, "I'll second that." He's a very good player. And we're going to find out in about a week and a half. We're hoping he gets drafted. I think he's going to get into a camp. Okay? He's finished his degree at North Carolina State. And to tell you how good he was there, he's the first 2-way player at NC State since the early 80s. They played him on both sides of the ball. Okay? He was a fine young man. I see one of his teachers sitting out there. He's always smiling. He's a good kid. Right now, while he's home, I'm taking advantage of him. He's helping coach my wide receivers during spring practice for me. I want him around every time I can have him around because he's a tremendous leader. He has all the right qualities, and anytime I can have this young man around our youth of today, it's a positive. The Bullet, Rashard Smith.
First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to the man above because, without him, I wouldn't be up here today. It's a great accomplishment. Coach Holmes sitting up here talking about me, but, right now I'm more of a proud brother than anything. Standing up here, being able to see my brother being inducted into the Hall of Fame, And then, watching guys like Eric Walden every day, my brother, Quintez Smith, Mr. Harris, coming behind them is the legacy I wanted to keep. So every day when I was young, I always asked myself, why not me? Why I can't be like those guys one day? And, that just humbled me, being able to do the things that I did, was all thanks to the man above, And I also had great teammates, I got teammate Brandon Edmondson out here in the crowd right now, And people like him, my family members, great job. I got my 4 lovely aunties sitting out here. Without them, I wouldn't be right here, I tell you that much. and then, my dad and my uncle, those 2 guys there, it's like, those are my heroes, All the yelling and the fussing and the, and the training that they put me through is the reason I'm standing right here, No other people can break me down and yell at me the way they used to. So when everybody else used to yell at me, it used to be like, just a regular conversation. But, and then again, it's the community of Dublin, having everybody that's sitting out here today show up on Friday nights, even Monday through Thursday, just seeing it in the papers, hearing the talk around the town. We got a game on Friday night. I just love, that's the type of atmosphere that I love, and that's the type of love of the game that I had also. So I like to thank all y'all for once, and then my family and the man above. So with that being said, in a week and a half I want to be in Eric Walden's shoes, playing in the NFL. So just hope. So I'm just staying prayed up, and once again thank you to the Dublin community, the Touchdown Club, and the people that came before me.
Thank you. Again, it's a great honor to be here tonight. We're taking a little bit of time. I noticed that we do have so many people here and so many more people that could be here. If they knew what we're all about and what we're doing, they're going to be real sorry they missed it. We do know that. But one of the things that, a common theme that we have tonight is the fact is that so many who've come have expressed the fact is that they're so proud to be a part of the team. They're so glad to have had this opportunity to be together. They're so appreciative of their coaches. They're so appreciative of their families. They're so appreciative of the community. I have friends that played football here at Dublin High School in 1940. And when you go back and talk to them, they still have the same basic theme that's been repeated the entire time. Tonight we're going to talk about a fellow that has had probably the most profound effect on Dublin High School and Dublin High School athletics that anyone ever has had or ever will have. And that's Mr. Tom Stewart. Now, as a part of my history lesson in reading this, I learned some things about Mr. Stewart that I had never known before, because as you notice, I never called him Coach Stewart, because he was always Mr. Stewart. Now, I knew he had coached, but that was kind of like old history. Well, one of the things that I read about here was the fact is he was also a fairly decent football player. He was the captain of Coach Wright Bazemore's first national championship team in Valdosta, Georgia. I think they went on to win about 27 more or something like that. But Mr. Stewart was the captain of the first team and played halfback on that team. Pretty remarkable. He intended to play football for Mercer, but World War II got in the way. And so it sort of messed up his personal career as a college football. So he went into coaching. I didn't quite realize, because he was never a coach around me, he was always my principal, that said that this article said his first coaching job was at Quitman High School. He coached there for 2 years. The school had not participated in football during the 8 years prior to his arrival. In his first season, the team record was 8-2, and in the second season, Quitman won the state championship. So it sounded like he knew a little bit about football. Well, he moved. He moved up to Bremen, Georgia. Coached there for 3 years. Team did well. His first season, they went 10-0. So again, he must have known a good bit about football. The following year, he was named the Georgia Coach of the Year and coached the South Georgia All-Star football team. Now, that'd be pretty nice if we just talked about football accomplishments and things of that nature. But, you know, and really in things of importance, what I wanted to talk to you about with Mr. Stewart is far more important than that. Much more than his character, much more than his ability, was his vision. And he had an appreciation for what we all have here in Dublin. And he realized that we had the potential to put something together here that was truly remarkable. And I came to Dublin in 1960, and the thing that I was able to see was Mr. Stewart, the primary thing that he was interested in was in academic excellence. And the school was run as though there was nothing more important than every student getting the best education humanly possible. Now, the thing you have to realize is that's kind of nice in a way, but you just can't be all about academics. You've got to be balanced. You've got to have understanding about what it really means. And he had an appreciation of what Dublin had to offer. There was never a more supportive, loyal, committed group of people than the fans and the people of Dublin, Georgia. As we're learning, the same thing that you guys are talking about over in Oconee was occurring here in Dublin. But the thing about Mr. Stewart was the fact is that he understood that academic excellence was something that could work hand in hand as far as building pride, building a community, and building a marvelous institution that could have a profound effect on all of the athletes and the students and the people of the town. And so what Mr. Stewart did was he wanted to make certain that in Dublin that we had the best of the best. So one of the first things you have to do if you can have a football team, as Coach Holmes will tell you, is if you're going to have a really good football team, the first thing you need is a really good football coach. And the greatest decision that he made for us, of course, is that Minton Williams was selected to be our head football coach. We talked about the football teams in 1959 and Tennyson Coleman and all of his great teammates and their state championship. And the followed up in 1960. And then in 1963. And then, of course, all the ones to follow. But the thing at Dublin High School was the fact is that everybody at Dublin High School knew that we were the best. We knew that when we went to play a game, we knew that if we did our jobs, we were going to win. We knew our coaches were the best. We knew that our teammates were the best. Nobody wanted to succeed more than us. And we fully intended to go and prevail. Now, Coach Stewart was one of those people that he was in the background. But his vision and his guidance and his direction kept us moving in this positive direction, and we continued this great tradition that we've had. Dublin High School became a better high school. Our athletics became better athletics. A lot of the things that were accomplished under his leadership encouraged the people from the city of Dublin to go and take their money and invest it in a new football stadium. Now, I'm going to tell you, as far as just sheer drama, if you never went to a football game late in the season when it meant something, if you never went to Battlefield, you sure did miss something special. Now, it wasn't going to win any beauty awards, but it sure was a special place. The thing is, and so this vision that we had, a logical thing is you're going to have the best school, the best town, the best team. You needed to have the best football field. And we know we have that. And, of course, the things Roger's been able to do following is just added to that legacy. And it's just absolutely remarkable what we have done. But as I can tell you as a former student of Dublin High School, the one thing that you never did, because I remember it so well, a pep rally at Dublin High School was the most stimulating, scintillating, exciting thing that you'll ever have. And we had them in the morning to get things really kicked off. And you had to have good manners all day. It was kind of hard, wasn't it? Because we were pretty excited. But see, we could do that. But see, Mr. Stewart understood that we were committed to excellence, but sports were important. We were going to take some time out and give it the emphasis that it was needed. And boy, it sure made a dramatic difference. And it built all that. And then in the afternoon, a funny thing, about 5 o'clock, if we had a game out of town, the whole town shut down. Okay? I can still remember being in an away football game when their stands were filled. And we had twice as many fans as they did. And we were standing out on the edge of the road. Because when the Irish went, everybody went. The thing you have to realize is this, again, is vision. And it comes. And Mr. Stewart is the one who had this, and he kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. So the fact is that when we went to a football game, it wasn't like we thought we had the best band. When our 150 band members came out, everybody knew we had the best band. When our football team came out, the other team knew we had the best football team. We knew we had the greatest fans. We had great cheerleaders. It was a community that was so unbelievably united with a common sense of purpose that made us all profoundly proud and dramatically changed this world that we live in and made it such a much better place. And all you have to do is come to a situation like this and listen to all the people speak. And their testimony bears out that everything that Mr. Stewart intended to do was accomplished beyond any imagination. Mr. Stewart, we love you.
It's been a great quarter of football that I love in the take well. I have hope that I can help somebody sometimes in some way. I had to we do something for them. We have a good program and a good first-class program, and I'm thankful for the work that they do. Thank you. Thank you for
I'll start it, but just real quick, when because I've kind of got a touch to everybody who's been recognized some tonight, so it's been kind of an emotional night sitting here watching a lot of this is going on. But you know, Coach Holmes, when he came, I was fortunate in 2002 him to name me defensive coordinator when he got here, and you know he said defensive coordinator though is going to have to go and trade film. And I said, well, Coach, I appreciate you thinking enough of me to name me defensive coordinator that I know defense, and I felt good about it. He said, no, you just know the directions to all the places to trade film. So, but what I did the next year, I was fortunate enough to take Eric Walden and Quintez Smith and the rest of the Green Wave defense to trick him into thinking, hey, maybe he does know defense. We'll see how that goes. So it worked out pretty good. But tell you a little bit about Paul DeFazio. Sat up there, eye in the sky for so many years here, the cameraman, and let me tell you, that's when they came up with the mute button. Okay? If you've ever known, and I love him to death because I'm going to tell you a quick story, then I'm going to let Coach Barrs tell you one real quick. But the thing is that we had to have the mute button because we would know how bad of coaches we were. when Paul was up there sometimes. And it would tell us like it is. But one thing he was always good about, he would make sure that Dublin High School was going to get the best out of what they needed. I was the girls' basketball coach for a little while, and he was the clock man. And we were sitting there playing the crosstown, I'm not even going to call their name, We Lose High School. Okay, I did. All right, but now, no, just playing. I'm sorry, all my West Lawrence buddies. I'm just going to take that. But anyway, the thing is we're sitting there playing them that night, and we had lost the lead. And at the clock, I'm the bench clock. I'm hearing Paul tell me why we lost the lead, which is fine. But anyway, we had 11 seconds to go. West Lawrence got the lead. They're shooting the basket, and I call a timeout to ice the little girl shooting. And so sure enough, the coach at that time, I'm sitting there just drawing up that this is what's going to happen. If they miss, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take it down here. Do this. The whole time, this coach is talking to the referee. He's going to hold that clock. This is the only place in the state of Georgia where 11 seconds is 18 seconds. He's going to hold the clock. They're going to get to go down there and make a layup. He's going to hold the clock. Well, timeout. There we go in. She misses the shot. We pick it up. Man, the play is set up, and we're looking like a champ. We're coming. Referee blows the whistle. You held that clock. You held that clock. So the whole time, she's yeah, see, I told you. You didn't give me technical, da-da-da. She's arguing that point. Well, we go back in, and I got the girls over again. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. Next thing you know, we run the play, go down the field. A little girl named Nicole Newton with the Georgia Southern play, fires in the shot, boom, bottom of the net. Go by, shake the coach's hand. Thanks very much. Take the win, go to the house. After the game, I go up to the Fazio. I said, how about you think, brother? What you think? I wasted all that damn time, and that's the best play you could come up with. Now, that's a Paul DeFazio moment, if there ever was one. And the other piece is, we wanted George Hagler, but George was out of town. Because let me tell you what, you talking about brothers, there's the language that we use in the football locker room that's called English, and then there's coach's language, and then there's George and Paul language. And if you ever sit in between one of their conversations, you will be educated. And I can tell you, George Hagler has a special place in his heart for Paul DeFazio. I mean, and we all do. And he meant so much to Dublin High School, football, basketball, whatever he did.
The most fun times I ever had was being in that coach's office and sitting there and listening to Paul and George go at each other. I'm telling you, it was a cartoon, folks. I'm telling you, they loved each other, but they would get after each other, and it was a lot of fun. We all loved him. John, did you remember the award that he got?
I looked it up.
I can't even remember. I'm embarrassed to even say this, but Paul, do y'all remember the award Paul got? What was the name of the award? No, it was from the Georgia Athletic Coaches Association. I can't remember. But anyway, he and Mr. Fred Middlebrooks got it at the same time because of all the years that he had filmed, and Mr. Fred Middlebrooks did the announcement. No, work the clock. But, folks, Paul would come in after every ball game, win, lose, or draw, tough ball game or whatever. And I will bore you with one last story. We're sitting there. We had just beat Waycross. Waycross's last year in existence. We had a 2-minute drive, went down the field, and won the game. He comes in, and he's all over me. He said, I ain't going to make it much longer. You keep coaching like this, I just ain't going to make it much longer. I said, Paul, that red and black had something to do with it over there now. We playing our rear ends off there. But he was always came up with something. And I know this. The mute button had to be installed. One night, we were at the Booster Club meeting, I turned that film on, and all of a sudden, bam. I said, whoa. So I called Paul. Paul came by to see me, and I said, Paul, you got to mute that thing. Now, I can hear you. Well, I can hear you, my whole Booster Club saying, who is that? And I said, I don't know. That's some fan going crazy on me. But anyway, he was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed him. And obviously, if you knew Mr. Paul, he's got a special place in everybody's heart that knows him, and he is truly missed. And I promise you, when you cut him, He bled green and gold.
Well, I'm here to accept the award for my dear brother. There's nothing more that he loved to do this ball game night. So I appreciate the award, and I know he would too. Thank you.
It's always hard to go first, and it's hard to go almost near the end, especially when you're talking about, if you knew anything about Breezy Wing, you'd have to be more than 100 years old. But there's some people that were living and remember what I'm talking about. So, Coach Snipes, if I get something wrong, whistle or make a noise here. It is my honor to introduce as the team into the Dublin High School Football Sports Hall of Fame, the 1960 state championship team. Winning a state championship is hard in any sport. It takes hard work, talent, and a lot of luck. Winning 2 consecutive state championships obviously is more difficult. Following the 1959 state championship, the fans and players and coaches in Dublin could just maybe hope for another shot at the title. According to what I read, it was one of the smaller teams in years and only had 3 starters returning from the 1959 team. Their first opponent was Crisp County, who had gone 9-1 the previous year, and the Irish shut out the Rebels 13-0 to extend their winning streak to 16 games. The next week they went to Fort Valley, the last team to have beaten them in 1958, and they came away with a defeat of 20-6. In the third game, Bill Reiner and Coach Ben Snipes led Dublin to a 19-14 win over Sandersville. The fourth game was a little bit more difficult. At the end of the half, Dublin found themselves behind. It was estimated that 4,000 people were in Battlefield. Lawrence spoke about that earlier. I might have been there that night. I cannot remember. Bill Reiner, during the game, took a reverse handoff and returned a punt for 70 yards for the first score against Cochran in the next game. He scored on a 76-yard run from the line of scrimmage. He scored a third time for 57 yards up the middle. And then the fourth time he had a chance to score, he passed the ball off to Ronnie Baggett, who ran 70 yards return on a punt. Sadly, the winning streak ended at 20 with a game against Swainsboro Tigers. There were some mistakes in that game, as they always are, and it almost jeopardized the Irish's chance at a region championship. Despite the injuries, they came back to defeat old nemesis Eastman High. And then the big game. Coach Minton Williams was very afraid of the America's running back, Jerry Reeves. In the first 9 games, Reeves' rushing average was 130 yards per game. Now, a lot of people think that I know everything that's ever happened in Lawrence County. I cannot tell you when I went to my first Dublin football game, but I think it was that night, and we sat on the other side of Moore Street on top of my father's car, and all I can remember is a sea of people all the way around the field, up by the gym, standing along the sidelines, and that must have been that game. Remember now, Coach Williams was worried about the running back, Jerry Reeves. Near the end of the game, the America's quarterback, who was a cousin of Jerry Reeves, scored on a 1-yard touchdown to put the Panthers ahead for good, and the Irish lost 27-21. That quarterback went on to play for the University of South Carolina, the Dallas Cowboys. He coached the Denver Broncos, the New York Giants, and the Atlanta Falcons. And in his career, he appeared in 8 Super Bowls, I think still a National Football League record. You probably know him. His name was Dan Reeves. The Irish ended their regular season that year with an 18-7 win over Baldwin County, and then went to play the Blue Devils from Statesboro for the Region 2A championship. 5,000 fans surrounded Battlefield. Maybe that was the game I went to. I don't know. I just remember seeing more people than a 4.5-year-old had ever seen in his life. The Irish with touchdowns from Tennyson Coleman, Bill Reiner, Ben Snipes, and if you forgive me, someone with the last name of Thomas, each scored a touchdown in every quarter and led to a 28-7 victory. 2 of those scores came from passes from quarterback Ronnie Baggett. The next week, the Irish traveled to Thomaston for the Class A state championship. Ronnie Baggett scored 3 touchdowns on keepers and completed all 6 of his passes. The game was very close in the 4th and final quarter, and the Irish broke a 20-20 tie in the last stanza to win the game, 33-20. On the sidelines that night, it was reported that the legendary Shug Jordan of Auburn University was on hand scouting the Irish players. During that season, Tennyson Coleman, Bill Reiner, Ronnie Baggett, and Ben Snipes were named to the All-Middle Georgia team, and help me coach, Ronnie Baggett and yourself were named to the All-State team that year, and along with their coach, Minton Williams. And what's been said here earlier tonight by most every one of the presenters and some of the awardees is that during those times, Dublin all came together. Even in the days before integration, back in the 50s, and some of you Oconee players might know this, and I've only been told this, but did some of your games, did some of the white folks go watch y'all play?
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. And I remember as early as the early 1950s that the people in Dublin, the businessmen, donated so that Oconee could play a game on Battlefield. I don't know if either one of you were there or not. But that's what I'm so proud about this team and all the other teams. And when this little lowly, geeky-looking kid, I got to play 3 seasons of midget football. First time I carried the ball was a kickoff, and the ball bounced in my hands, and I got about 2 yards before the whole team creamed me and broke my shoulder. I had 2 yards of net yardage in my old, but I thought I was going to die. But I got to play on the field where my heroes play, some of you in here tonight. And I also got the opportunity as a citizen and as a band parent to watch the new generation with the Smith brothers and Eric and watch them come and turn a community all the way around. Coach Bars had brought it up from it dropped down a little bit, and he brought it back in. Roger came in and once again made Dublin a football community. And Mr. Harris, I appreciate your remarks too, because I think that shows what Dublin is all about.
I think that sometimes to help remember history and help to move forward and help to leave our children's children something, part of what we're doing here tonight is for that. But I've had the opportunity to coach Eric Walden, had the opportunity to get to know him as a player, took him on his recruiting trip to Middle Tennessee, and I remember when we crossed through those mountains in Chattanooga, he was amazed. Riding up the road with Riley and Erica, and Erica's in pre-K, kindergarten, and she was just amazed with Eric, Tez, because I think we dropped you off in Chattanooga, didn't we? Took him on up to Murfreesboro and picked him back up on the way home, trying to help these young men get scholarships. And Eric was a very gifted young man, but he wasn't mature enough yet to realize what he had. He graduated at 17 years old. There are seniors graduating that are 19 that are still eligible. He was a young kid, you know. And it was unfortunate because I think it was the ACT score or whatever. He was a prop. A prop means you might have had the GPA, but you didn't have the test score that you had to have to get an athletic scholarship straight up. Or vice versa. You made the test score, but you didn't have the GPA. And at that time, the SEC had changed their rules. You couldn't sign a prop anymore in the SEC. And the ACC was a little bit better academic. I think that's what they thought of themselves, and they wouldn't take any props. So it limited some of the choices that Eric had. But a good friend of mine and the guy that spoke last year was Andy McCullum. And he was willing to take a chance on Eric Walden and bring him to Middle Tennessee. But see, the problem was, as a prop, you couldn't play when you were a freshman. All you could do was go to school, pay your own way, by the way, and if you did what you were supposed to do academically, then you got to play. So he goes up there. And then on top of that, and I'm going to talk about some of the other things, but I say this quite often, and I mean it. The thing that was the most impressive thing to me, when he would come back to town and I would start meddling in his life in my office, he would tell me, Coach, I'm taking care of my business. Coach, I want to do what I've got to do. I want to get my degree, and I want to play in the NFL. He was starting to mature. He was starting to figure things out that had to be done. His junior year at Middle Tennessee, he was named the academic award winner for the whole athletic department. That's pretty good. And I think a lot of that had to do with maturity and growing up. But he was a pretty darn good football player, too. Okay, he earned first team Associated Press All-State as a senior at Dublin. Okay. Helped be a part of leading his team to the state championship game. He was the Macon Telegraph first team All-Middle Georgia selection, being tabbed by the Courier Herald as the Heart of Georgia Defensive Player of the Year. He ended his senior year with 97 total tackles, a school record 19 sacks. Also had 11 tackles for a loss. He recorded 2 fumbles, had 1 interception. And not only that, as a running back, he averaged 6.6 yards a carry that year, scored 8 touchdowns, had 16 passes caught for 4 more scores, had 837 yards total offense. He was also named, if you didn't know it, to the all-decade team in the state of Georgia for the decade of 2000 by the AJC. When he got to Middle Tennessee, he was voted as an all-conference Sun Belt football player in both 2006 and 2007. He set the single-season record for sacks at Middle Tennessee. Then he set the career record for sacks at Middle Tennessee. He ended up being drafted in the 6th round by the Dallas Cowboys. That was a special thing. And again, I started meddling into his business. Because I asked him what he wanted to do. Told me he wanted to be a coach one day. Told him I'd love to get him back when he gets done with his career. But what he needed to remember out of all this whole dream of chasing this NFL career, that take care of what they're giving you, be proud of what you got, and make sure that you stay humble and don't forget how you got it. He comes back to Dublin very often, and when he does, it means a lot to me that he comes by my office. It means a lot to Mr. Strickland that he always goes by his school, and those little kids over there go crazy about Eric Walden. or the Dublin Middle School or putting on the Eric Walden football camp. Every year he comes back in the summer. I don't think he's forgotten where he's come from. I think he's a very humble young man who now, after being drafted in the 6th round, he could have probably given up. Probably could have given up. Because the last day before I guess it was the last day, but the last cut, Cowboys released Eric. They thought they were going to slip some people over and put him on the practice squad and teach him how to play outside linebacker for a year. And the Kansas City Chiefs picked him up. Well, he's playing special teams. Not getting much opportunity to play outside linebacker. Now, this is my perception. This might not be Eric's. Okay? And then all of a sudden, the Kansas City Chiefs get somebody back that had probably been hurt, which is why they signed Eric to start out with. They get the guy back and they release Eric. But lo and behold, the Miami Dolphins pick him up. Just 1 week in Kansas City, the next week you're in Miami, if I remember that right. Things look pretty good. He's playing some special teams, but he's still not getting the chance to really get on the field on the defensive side of the ball and play. So I think we finished that year. The next year, the Dolphins re-signed him. And this is probably one of those roster moves. Didn't they release you for 3 days or something right at the end and then re-sign you? That's one of those business things, I guess, don't know anything about. Well, I was proud of all that and everything's going good. And I'm sitting at home. I don't remember if it was a Sunday night or a Monday night game. And lo and behold, Eric is a wing back in the punt protection, and he missed a block. And they blocked a punt. And I guess it was Tuesday morning, if not Monday morning, when you got back to work, he didn't have a job. He was cut. Stayed that way for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, or something like that. I'm getting worried about my buddy now. I don't know if he's ever going to get another chance. And by fate, the Green Bay Packers get a bunch of outside linebackers hurt. And I think I remember reading something, they signed a street free agent in Eric Walden. You know? They pick up Eric at Green Bay, and they had some outside linebackers hurt. You played a lot of snaps at outside linebacker your first week up there. Probably didn't know the system real well. And if I'm not mistaken, about 2 weeks later, you got your first start, and you were named the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. That's a big honor. Finished up, he became a free agent. And if you're a free agent, you want to test the market and see if you have any value to other people in the NFL. I don't think that, Eric, were you the first player signed when free agency opened? It was within an hour or something. You was already an Indianapolis Colt. So that said a lot about what everybody else thought about Eric Walden in the NFL. Folks, we've had 2 groups of individuals that have gone into the Hall of Fame. Eric was one of those last year. I believe that a young man who played had a great career in the city of Dublin, who went on and represented our town and our community great in college football, and was good enough to earn an NFL pension, because they don't give those out, is a gentleman that this town should honor and retire his jersey. Big E, come on up.
Instead of taking a whole nother 45 minutes, I'm going to cut it down to 40 minutes. But no, first off, I'd like to thank the Most High, for allowing me to be here, to be in this position. There's a lot of people that, contributed to my success. Coach Holmes, Coach Fred Williams, Coach Strick, Coach Bars, my family, my teammates, everybody. So, I couldn't have done it alone, and, I'm thankful for all of you. Never in a million years I think my jersey will get retired at Dublin High School. Starting playing rec ball while I was the quarterback, and then going in high school while I'm playing free safety. And Coach Holmes becomes the new head coach in the summer. So we have a meeting. You can tell me, what you think about defensive end? So I'm looking at, who are you talking to? No, he ain't talking to me about playing defensive end. I play safety. I hope you've been watching the film the last 3 years. So, it was me, him, and Fred Williams. We sat in his office. We met. Coach Williams was like, you might want to consider it. He might be the, best decision for you. So, I thought about it. I even questioned myself. I even thought about transferring because, he just came in. You don't know if you could trust him, if that was for my best interest. But, they end up being the best decision that I ever made. And I'd like to thank you personally, Coach. You pretty much said everything I was going to say. But, I just feel like with life, man, it's about growth. It ain't about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how you respond and how you handle adversity. So with that said, I was able to, with perseverance and determination, it all paid off. Like Coach said, I was a prop. I had to sit out. A lot of people question your ability, your talents, But a lot of that was my fault because I didn't handle my business academically in the classroom. So when I go out and I reach out and I talk to kids, I try to make sure that's the most important part and put an emphasis on your academics because without it, you're nothing, So also, nonetheless, I like to thank my mom. Without her, none of this would be possible. My entire family, but, with her working numerous hours, dropping me off to practice, coming back in to get me, going nights, making sure we get extras and she want to eat, so things like that carried over to me and kind of create the work ethic I have today. So, Mom, I'd like to tell you I love you and thank you for everything. I'd like to also thank the Touchdown Club for presenting this honor for me, man, because it's just a tremendous blessing to even to be in the shoes and just have this opportunity to accept the award like this because, there's so many players that were better than me. Quintez Smith, Shaw, so it's just, man, I'm kind of speechless right now. So, I'd like to thank you all, man, and, that's why I work so hard to make sure I don't let you guys down, and try to be a role model and a positive person for this community. With all that said, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are Dublin High School. Oconee High School, if you walk in our field house, if you've never been there, there is a beautiful trophy case of everything that the Alumni Association from Oconee High School could come up with to give us. Across the hallway, right across the hallway from it, is Dublin High School, prior to integration. And you continue down that hallway, and every trophy that's in there from that point forward, from integration, is now in those next trophy cases. It is a history hallway of what Dublin City Schools is about and how it's come together. This is your town. This is your school. It's not my school. I love it, and I'm proud to be a part of it. But this isn't my school. This is yours. If you're not going to fight for it and do everything you can to continue to make Dublin School the best it can be, we're not going to continue to remember all the great times. Dublin is a special town. I know that. It didn't take but one trip to understand that. You don't have to be here. You may not live here anymore, but this is your town. Continue to make it the best it can be. And it will continue to reward the people in the future. Thank you for being here, and God bless you.